Welcome to Michigan's Great Beer State Podcast, brought to you by the Michigan Brewers Guild, celebrating 25 years of camaraderie. The Great Beer State Podcast shares the stories of our member breweries and the rich community of Michigan beer and brewing. Listen in, have a beer, and then check out mibeer.com for a full listing of member breweries, events, and more opportunities to explore and support the Great Beer State. Welcome back to Michigan's Great Beer State Podcast. My name's Fred. I'm here with Scott, and we are talking Michigan beer and Michigan breweries. We've got an interesting episode today. We're going to one of our allied trade members, and we're talking to distributor owner Jimmy Warbritton. But first, we'll kind of check in. We're a little post-summer beer fest, and just taking in here the middle, maybe starting the tail of summer. Scott, any new updates we should be thinking about?
Nope, we're just in the midst of festival season. I guess it feels like, coming off the summer festival, still enjoying some hot summer weather, making plans for the UP Fall Beer Festival, and looking forward to Detroit as well. So it feels really festive right now.
Absolutely. I'm sure your plate's full, keeping it all moving. Tickets are on sale for both.
Yes, indeed. Of course, they're all sold at mibeer.com at our website. So you can click on over there and get some tickets, make plans with your friends.
So what is attendance looking like these days, and what are some pro tips in terms of approaching the festival? So are they selling out? Do people need to get on it? What should they know about maybe the opportunity for enthusiast entry? Any of that stuff?
Well, yes, we're certainly in a kind of a post-COVID or latter COVID scene of unpredictability. The summer festival attendance was a little lighter than I had anticipated. So we're selling tickets at the gate both days. Made for a really nice event. I thought the atmosphere was great. It wasn't quite so intense as it has been some years with higher attendance. So it was really nice, successful event, good weather. Last year we were sold out in Marquette right when we were coming back. That was our first festival back, was a year ago at the UP Fall Beer Festival, and ticket sales are strong. So, we plan for a finite number of tickets, and they could well sell out again this year, although it would likely be in that last week or two. And of course, if we have tickets available, we'll be selling them right up until the event and at the gate. But it's always a good idea to make plans in advance, especially if you're going to be traveling.
Yeah, and getting rooms is a good idea as well.
Yeah.
Don't dawdle on your lodging. What else? What should people know about Enthusiast membership? I think it's been a while since we've talked about that. One of the perks is an opportunity to get into festivals and earlier and different entrants. So maybe a plug for signing up for Enthusiast would be a good idea.
Yeah, Enthusiast membership, of course, is an individual membership. It costs $35 for a whole year. And the best perk, I think, that you get is that early hour into the festivals. We always open 1 hour before general admission. It's kind of a VIP hour for enthusiast members, and it really gives you a chance when it's very quiet still in the festival to get around to maybe a brewery you haven't seen before you want to talk to, or to maybe get to one that you haven't been to and you want to make sure you get there. If you peruse the beer list in advance and think there's something special that might be really popular and run out, you can get that on your list and get it out of the way. But the enthusiast membership is really a fun club of sometimes quirky individuals, but a bunch of really nice people who are great beer fans.
Awesome. Sounds familiar. Sounds similar to the rest of the membership.
Yeah.
And you also, throughout the fest, so whether you're taking advantage of that early hour or not, the enthusiast entry is a different lane on the way in. So if you ever see that line that wraps around, you can skip it. And
yes, you can advance past the line.
Head on over to the fast lane.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a good enough time to jump into Brewers Dozen. But check out your fest tickets out there, and look for other collaborative things going on. We've got collaboration brews out and about and glassware. So check those things out. And I'll plug the Great Beer State documentary a little bit when we're talking about Jimmy. So Brewers Dozen, our episodic walk through our membership roles to give shout outs to breweries that you should consider going to visit all around this great beer state. We're heading alphabetically on this lap, and I'll start with East Channel Brewing Company in Munising.
And we'll follow that up with Ellison Brewery and Spirits in East Lansing. I think they're in the midst of a move to a location in Riotown in Lansing, but I believe their East Lansing location is still where they're operating from.
All right. Hot tip right in the moment. Stay tuned. Erratic Ale is in Dexter.
Yeah, that's a newer member. And Farm Club in Traverse City is just north of Traverse City, and it's a unique brewery in a farm setting.
All right, check that out. Farmington Brewing Company is in Farmington.
And Fenton Winery and Brewery, of course, is in Fenton.
And we've got Fetch Brewing Company in Whitehall.
Yeah, that's kind of Southwest Michigan if you don't know where Whitehall is. Fillmore 13 Brewery is in Pontiac.
And we've got Five Shores Brewing in Beulah.
And Five Sons Brewing in Marinesco. If you wonder where Marinesco is, I'll give you a hint. It's in the Central Time Zone.
Is that the only hint?
Yeah.
Head west and north.
Yes.
All right, Flat River Brewing Company in Greenville.
And Founders Brewing Company, home of Founders, Grand Rapids.
And of course, Founders Brewing Company in Detroit as well. So that's our Brewers Dozen, which brings us to introducing our guest for this episode, who is Jimmy Warbritton. And as you'll hear in this conversation, we've been friends a long time, and there's a good deal of sort of old home week, old stories. But I started calling on Rave Associates, distributor back in 1995, selling bells, and Jimmy was a salesperson. And I think was my first ride with. So, and now he and his wife Meg own the company and have led it for a number of years, and to being a remarkably different wholesaler in terms of their ratio of wine to beer, and of course they have a really strong Michigan brewing portfolio as well, and craft brewing in general. So this isn't our first, but it's one of the fewer forays outside of the brewing community specifically and into allied trade. And looking forward to y'all hearing this interview. I think it's an important story to tell as their industry has changed right alongside ours.
Yeah, I think it really highlights the fact that there were a lot of businesses besides breweries that helped bring this industry to where it is. And Jimmy mentions Ashley's. And when you think of retailers that were, early adopters of different beers, and one of the terms that I picked out of this interview that I hadn't really heard applied to beer before, but I like it, was Jimmy referred to fine beer, right? And some people talk about good beer, meaning local, specialty, craft, whatever you want to call it. And I kind of don't like that, because it sort of implies that maybe the major industrial yellow fizzy lager is not good. And if you're talking subjective about what's good and bad, I think that could be fair. But those beers are made to a very high quality standard. And I don't think that it's helpful to disrespect them, although they're intentionally boring. That's what they are, and a lot of people like that. But to refer to beer as fine beer, I thought was just a really nice way to characterize it without shedding any negative connotation on other beers. I just thought that was really good. One of the other things that I wanted to point out is, Rave has been involved since the very early days. The very first summer beer festival back in 1997 when people were taking different pieces that they were going to work on, one of the things that I volunteered to work on was getting the beer there. And this is when we went through the process of saying, well, if we're going to have brew pubs have their beer there, we're going to have them go collaborate and brew their beer at a microbrewery. And there were some references when we were talking with Patrick Scanlon about Detroit Brew Factory and Sandy Harville's place, which was a brew on premise, and different breweries collaborated and did this for brew pubs. This is before we had the law change so that we could buy their beer legally. But when we were figuring out how to get all this beer there, some of these breweries didn't have a contract, or these beers were with a distributor, these beers were one-off. Rave agreed to work with us and make sure we could get all that beer legally to the very first festival and for festivals after that. And they've been an important partner to the Brewers Guild, and I think maybe a behind the scenes supporter, promoter, but an important part of the development of the industry. And it's really nice to hear this conversation. It's a really good interview with Jimmy Warbritton.
Yeah, and you brought up the documentary there, and I wanted to mention that this is one of those interviews where, when you're kind of get into it, we have 60 hours or 80 hours of footage that we were trimming down to an hour for the documentary. And this is one of those interviews and characters where it's like, oh, we have this little bump, this little sentence and nod to what the community was. And this is one of those interviews where I really hope, people go. My thought with the documentary is that I hope people then come and find the podcast and listen to a whole 35 minutes or so, because I think it's interesting perspective that those of us that are brewery focused, listeners or otherwise, not everybody always gets to see that. And you're right, they were early on at great inconvenience to them, eventually benefit to them as well. But the labor that they were putting into rooting for our community to develop, to helping us survive those early festivals, it was an investment in the scene and in us, and it was they sacrificed a lot of time and energy and people and hours to make that happen. And I think a lot of times on the brewing side, employees, whether they be on the sales end or the brewing end, hearing about the trials and tribulation of distribution and brewers versus distributors and how some of the laws are sort of imbalanced. Sometimes they don't get the whole picture, that because those things are all true. It's difficult and we have different objectives, and at times we're at odds with one another as categories. But that shouldn't overshadow the fact that there are many, Jimmy is one of many people who stood up early before it was obvious or popular. And even within their distributor community, they were early voices that said, this is important and this is a good thing, and we're gonna stand up.
And they continue to say, what can I do to help? Your festival's in my territory. What do you need? Just reach out. And there are lots of examples where we've needed something for a festival and reached out to one of the distributors that we're close partners with and have a long history with, and they've just been there and been great supporters and really willing to help out. So it's nice to recognize that. Like you said, sometimes there are some challenges, but there's also a lot of help and support, and the industry wouldn't be the same if we didn't have a lot of those characters in it.
Yeah, and one other sidebar I think this gives us an opportunity to talk about is that he mentioned some importers by name, well, people anyways, Lanny, and I think he mentions Matthias as well. And this goes back to your fine beer comment, that usually when we're brewer focused, we may talk about everything changed when I went to Belgium or went to Germany or England and I got inspired and I want to make those style of beers and bring them here, but fresh. We talk about sort of other cultures of beer being a great influence and style. But having sold beer in the mid-90s, this is a good reminder that importers, people selling import beer, were also up against a difficult path. They were also trying to tell people that good beer, beer that's more expensive, beer that's more flavorful, harder to get, all these different things, maybe in a strange package size, maybe needing its own glassware, maybe people haven't heard of it. All these things that craft beer has had to change in the worldview of our marketplace. The people alongside us making those changes were imports as well. People selling funny Belgian beers and so on and so forth. And that was a community I was both part of and alongside for a long time. And I hadn't thought of it till just this introduction and thinking, they probably don't get many shout outs for helping prime the pump for craft beer. But as a community, they certainly did. They were introducing fine beer to people long before beer was brewed in Michigan.
Yeah, indeed.
So great time to think about that and why a wine. I think it's also just maybe wrapping it up and then hand it off to Jimmy. Now it makes perfect sense in hindsight to see how a specialty, boutique wine wholesaler who then adopted some fine beer from across the pond was really well suited to grow into this serious craft beer wholesaler. But at the time, it was anything but a sure bet, and they had more eyebrows raised at them than people saying it was definitely a solid move. So kudos to the whole team for making that work and for all the support they provided our Michigan brewing community while they did it.
Yeah, we could probably go on longer, but I will just say a cheers and thanks to Jimmy and Rave Associates.
Yeah, so we interviewed Jimmy in Detroit in October of 21, adjacent to the Fall Beer Festival. And we'll hand it off to him. Here's Jimmy. Cheers. Jimmy, welcome. Great to see you.
Great to see you.
So we're trading stories. We're talking about the good old days and all the way up to now in the Michigan beer brewing and industry and community. So you've been a big part of that for a long time, and I thought maybe we'd go back to the beginning and talk about how did you end up in the beer business in the first place?
Yeah, that's a good one. Really, it was more happenstance than something that was a passion. I mean, I was passionate about drinking beer, and that pretty much since I was way before I was legal to drink beer. But really didn't I got into it through Meg, my wife's neighbor. She babysat for him, and he worked for a small distributor that was in the same warehouse as Rave at the time. So, and I want to say it was called Brewers or something like that. But anyways, they were a small beer distributor, and a guy worked for him, and then he started working for Rave. They were in the same building. He started working for Rave, and then they needed a driver and somebody to work in the warehouse. I happened to be available.
And what was Rave at that time?
Rave was a wine distributor, total wine, so they didn't have any beer. And for quite a few years, actually. I started there in 84, so.
Wow.
Yeah, they were totally wine, so, and, I really was hauling cheap wine to Farmer Jack's for my first year, so that was pretty much the gist of my first year, was dealing with the most miserable people in the grocery industry, the Farmer Jack manager. So if they couldn't break me, nobody could. So
yeah. And then kind of short story, what happens from there? How do you move from delivering cheap wine to
I'll
selling?
give you the short story on it. I drove for that first year. Rave went through some pretty good transitions, but there was maybe 4 sales reps, 2 drivers, and a couple people in the office, plus the ownership. So very small company. I got into sales because they couldn't keep somebody in Jackson County hire, or they couldn't keep a salesman there. So, Greg Mitchell had kind of pushed me to start to sell. I started selling 1 day a week. I was driving 4 days. I was just pretty successful at it. I just kind of went from day to day. I've started making more money selling, than I was driving, and moved right into sales. I was selling probably 3 days a week up to about 1990. I was also in the National Guard. My unit got activated. I was gone for about a year. Went over with Stormin Norman. Me and him went to Saudi Arabia together. Won the war and came back and got into sales full time. Was good at it. Really loved what I was doing. Loved wine, loved beer, loved people, and I guess I was kind of a natural at it. So.
And what did you thought you were going to be doing? I mean, it sounds like you sort of took a job that then changed the course of everything afterwards. And what had you imagined? What did you want to be when you grew up before then?
Yeah, well, that's a good one, Fred. I wasn't really planning on growing up, so it's kind of I really lived in a farming community. I loved to farm. I thought maybe I could do that. I also farmed through those years, but realized all the farmers that I knew were all old. There wasn't very many farmers my age, so it was a tough business to get into. I kind of figured I would, end up doing something like that. So now I'm just kind of supporting farmers, and I do farm a little bit now. So
yeah,
I don't make any money at it, so was a good thing that I didn't do it when I didn't have any money. So
yeah, and so before we jump into, let's kind of stay here. So, like before you go into your role now, and we'll get to that whole part of the story. But I think, at what point does beer and Michigan beer enter the picture for Rave and/or for you at Rave? Like, at what point does this beer enter the story?
Yeah, that's a good one. We with Greg Mitchell, we kind of realized that Greg was a kind of a party store operator when he was going to Eastern Michigan, and he saw younger people drinking good beer, realizing that beer was kind of sold, good fine beer was sold the same way that wine was sold. He said, why don't we get into this beer market? There was a lot of imports that were available, and really it was kind of the wild, wild west then. You could, if you wanted a beer, you could get it, so it really wasn't a real stable market, but it was, there was definitely beer to be sold, and fine beer. So we hooked up originally with Lanny Hoff and All Saints, and they had some great beers, and they really had good connections, and really Lanny was kind of our first foray into good beer. So and he came with great enthusiasm and great knowledge. The guy was just he knew everything about all the breweries that they represented,
and those were Belgian breweries,
right? They were Belgian, they were German, they were beer, good beers from wherever good beer was produced, really. Mm-hmm. And then we got in with Matthias, so really we were selling fine beers prior to Larry Bell, and then
and what year do you think that started?
God, I want to say it was 86, 87. Oh, Greg ran into Larry down at the Del Rio, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Larry was delivering.
Yeah.
And
so All Saints predates that. So you're talking about really early in the curve.
Yep.
If it's before.
And I'm pretty sure that was our dive back into it.
Yeah.
We had been doing some other stuff, some fancy bottles that Sam's Club was buying, but we weren't, we weren't selling that stuff. It was already pre-sold, so we were just garbage hauling it. But really, I mean, Lanny got us in and really hooked us, you know, and
Yeah.
really got us connected with all the people who were looking for it. So, you know, which were, you know, the big stores then were merchants and
And were there
a lot
many
of Red Wagons and stuff like that.
were there many other brands or time? Was there a lot of time between the All Saints sort of addition of fine beer in the portfolio and Bell's? Like what was the length of time before a Michigan beer
God, I
entered
don't
the
know. I
scene?
mean, I'd have to,
Yeah.
man, you're testing my memory. I got that. You know, I'm a little bit older, Fred. So
Yeah.
I've got that CRS.
Well, I mean, did it just feel like a natural progression? Because the idea of Michigan beer existing wasn't fully, you know, it wasn't that common.
No, you're
knowledge
right.
yet,
You're
I mean,
right. And I'm telling you, you know, and I've said this many times before. Greg Mitchell, really, he saw that, and he was involved in those early meetings with Bell and you know, John and Tim and
Yeah.
you know all those guys, because he told me, he said, Jim, you know, you watch, you'll see Michigan beer signs on the side of highways, you know, and you know, I kind of laughed at him, but he was absolutely right, and he was really, he knew it, he saw it early on, and you know, he really kind of set us up. You know, the guy was, he was ahead of his time. There's no doubt about it. And,
Yeah.
Very instrumental. So,
Yeah.
and again, he was the one that saw Larry at the Del Rio and said, Larry, why are you delivering beer, man? That's what we do.
Yeah.
Let us deliver your beer. And that was it. I mean, that was, I'm sure they drank a pint and, you know,
Yeah.
probably swore at each other a couple of times.
Probably.
You know.
Maybe.
First time in, you know, of many that,
Yeah.
you know, preceded it. But, yeah.
Yeah, and so tell me a little, just briefly, what was his role in the Rave connection and just, you know, because it sounds like he helped change the face of that company, but also, like you said, he saw something in the beer industry the rest of the industry didn't necessarily
Right.
see it.
Yeah,
that way.
way prior to it, you know.
And-
his, you know, his role at Rave was originally salesman, and got into was a sales manager. Mary Rave loved him, and he became the sales manager. And then they sold him the company, and they really they set Greg up. They set Greg and Marty and Guy and Carol and Bob up pretty well. So.
Yeah.
That was, you know, and that was kind of their way of saying thanks for keeping the place from going under, taking all Bill's money. You know?
Yeah.
So Bill always said, you know, you want to make a small fortune in the distributing business, start with a large one. So kind of like the brewing
Yeah.
industry. So.
Yeah. So, how did your view of beer change as you got used to that? So, like, what was it like in terms of you're in the sales role and as the sort of 90s roll in and things start to move differently? What did you see? When did you first go, oh, you know, maybe something's happening here? What did that look like?
Right. You know, man, that's a real good one, because it was, you know, I mean, for a long time we were, you know, 90% wine and 10% beer, 95% wine, 5% beer, you know, and as it started to change, you know, I mean, boy, again, I mean, that's, you know, a timeline that's, you know, boy, it had to be, you know, early 90s, mid 90s, you know, where
Yeah.
we were really, you know, kind of, I think if you looked at kind of Ashley's success, kind of as they started to really become a strong player, so did we, you know. I mean, so kind of gauge it with, you know, being early on, and you know, and now it's, you know, you're in a sea of success stories, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're one of many, but one of the first. So.
Well, and it's
we were
interesting to see how it's changed so many different segments of the industry, right? So Ashley's is a great example. Rave's a great example. Like this sea change changed business models on all different sides.
Right. Right.
And so, you know, retailers started to look different and be built differently, and same with wholesalers.
Right. And breweries, quite honestly, you know, that was another thing that I think, Greg saw early on, he said, there's going to be breweries in every town, every small town, and I think people were, going, what are you talking about, because, again, I mean, 99% of the beer sold, or 99.9% of it was Bud and Miller, and everybody was drinking it. So, I don't think everybody really saw his vision, at least not as early on as he did.
Yeah. So fast forward a little bit and catch us up. How did you go from a salesperson in Jackson to your role now? And acquiring the company.
Well, again, Greg and Marty, Guy, Carol, and Bob owned Rave, and they were probably as different of people as you could imagine. Kind of a unlikely group to go into business together, right? So they were successful, and really, I think a lot of that was again Greg Mitchell, but the rest of them had a part in keeping the company rolling and really kind of guiding it through those years with those guys, which were fairly good growth years. So they decided they were going to sell it. Nobody within the company thought that they were, probably had enough money to buy the place. I can remember one day we had a meeting with all the salespeople that thought about, going in together and, trying to buy it, which would have been an absolute nightmare. I'm sure that everybody left the meeting and went, that's not going to happen, right? So I was very fortunate to, one, marry my lovely bride, and
who got to the gig in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we had some connections that she had worked for. Mark Hutton, who she had worked for quite a few years while we were, in our early years, and she was able to take Jill with her to work, and Mark they became very good friends. But Mark was pretty well connected and knew a sales and acquisition attorney, tax attorney, by the name of Chuck Mira. And he said, I asked Mark, I said, do you think there's something that we could, Meg and I could pull together to put this thing together? And he said, I wouldn't know, Jim, but go talk to Chuck. So I went and talked to Chuck, just one of the greatest, smartest men I've ever known. And he truly, without him, I would not be sitting right here. Him and Mark, and obviously Meg, but
yeah.
He set up the deal, and it was kind of amazing, and it was truly a one of those things that probably wouldn't ever happen again, but
yeah.
We were very fortunate, and when we bought it, 2003, we had double-digit growth for 10 years after that. And really, we're very fortunate to be hooked up with some of the best and fastest growing brands. I mean, Bell obviously led the charge for us, but we've been very fortunate and continue to be fortunate with the brands that we pick up. And again, I think I call them brands, but most of them are friends. So
yeah. So a whole lot has happened there too. I mean, besides your perspective changing in a huge way from a sales role to this broader vision and oversight. I mean, that's a massive shift, but at the same time, the industry and your business is changing. So what's the current makeup of like beer, wine percentages, and then how much of your beer portfolio is Michigan?
Well, that's a good one.
I mean, rough, just kind of gut.
Right, I'm going to say we're probably somewhere around probably 85-15, 90-10 beer to wine.
Wow.
We do have some mixers and some non-alcoholic, but it's beer to wine, and I think our wine business has stayed steady. We still continue to represent some of the greatest wines from all over the world. That business is just, it's changed a lot, so, we still offer a lot of great wines, but really, the thing that's going on the truck that's paying the bills and has really expanded or, driven our growth has been beer. And, we're very fortunate to represent as many brands as we do, but, I would be a liar if I didn't tell you that, again, Bell's is, we've been so fortunate to be partners with those guys, and, they're a good portion of that, those sales. So
Yeah.
they're the reason that we can continue to pick up new brands, and, we never stop. We actually just kicked off 3 new Canadian brands Friday. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, some breweries that a good friend of ours, Bernard Johnson. I don't know if you know Bernard, but
I don't.
Uncle Bro, he's brought them in for us. Great guy, and just we're so fortunate that we're able to continue to pick up brands because they're good, and so.
Yeah. And so, where do I want to go with this? I think that, it wouldn't have been like betting odds on a distributor being able to be a really strong player in the distribution community of beer without a major domestic brand. That would have been, I think having a brand makeup like you do for beer in the 90s would have sort of relegated you to the specialty, sort of not at the main table in the distributor's point of view. I'm sort of interpreting broadly. But that's changed a lot. So and you've still built your sort of presence as a distributor and inverted that ratio all on, on non-major domestic beer.
Right.
I mean, that's an amazing shift. I think what I'm wandering into is sort of, you're in 2 communities at least, if we're not even talking about wine and stuff. You're connected to the brewing community, which I want to talk about soon. But I also want to reflect that you're part of a distributor community, that there's all these distributors across the state, and you have your own relationships and interactions in terms of brand transitions, and also just competing in the same marketplace. So I think the question is, how have you seen those communities change, or what do you think are some signatures of both the wholesaler community you belong to and the brewing community you're a member of?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've seen one community get a little bit smaller and another community get a lot larger. So, and that has changed the I guess the dynamics of how things happen. I don't think a distributor our size, or maybe our with our portfolio, would have probably been involved as heavily as we are now with the beer and wine wholesalers. So, as our presence has grown in the retail, it has grown also in the wholesale. So, and I think along with that, comes some respect from people who, Rave is now, it's almost a 50-year-old company, right? We were 1974, so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of amazing to say that, but, we are now kind of the distributor family. We are looking at our 2nd generation, and we have little 3rd generationers running around who will probably be, taking care of empties or something in a few years. So it's kind of a weird place to be for me and my family. And I think the industry, we've seen consolidation. I think that happens naturally, as small distributors become more successful and they become more marketable. People, naturally will, take the big payday, and so that's probably why our industry is, as distributors, is getting a little bit smaller. But it definitely makes it more important for the people who are remaining to stay strong and stay united, right? So we have to be strong, just like you guys have to be strong. Politically, we have to stay involved. We have to remember that grassroots are really what keep our industry alive, and it's what protects us all. So, I didn't mean for it to get into the 3-tier rah-rah, but it's even though the 3-tier has changed somewhat because of successful breweries and successful wineries becoming, being able to be self-distributed, which is absolutely good for the small guy. It's a good way to start out, and really I think it gives them an opportunity to see what the next tier is all about, right?
Yeah.
So gives them a little taste of going out and selling into a market rather than having the market come to you. So I think the changes that have happened have been good. I think I believe that consolidation will happen eventually with every industry, especially successful ones, and then they shrink, and then they'll grow again and create more enterprise. So
Yeah. What do you think is important? Well, no, I'm going to change this. I'm going to start kind of with, when you think about the communities that all this business lives within, like, the 7 counties you cover, maybe you cover more by now, but what do you think that having selection and choice and all these beautiful beers, especially locally made beers, and the collaboration that happens between brewer and wholesaler to bring that to the community, what's the benefit? What's great for the communities about having this change in the marketplace that's happened over the last 30 years?
Well, the fact that variety is so plentiful in our industry. I mean, you can get, we go to Hamtramck, there's 10 Polish beers or 15 Polish beers down there that are brought in small quantities through small distributors like us and small suppliers like Donia, and Yakov and Matthias and all those guys. Really is it allows ethnic communities to be able to bring in their country's products. And without a system like this, they would never be able to do that. We'd all be drinking Bud and Miller,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's always been strong, but I think it's as strong as it ever has been. We have sakis, we have Polish beers, we have beers from 40 nations, So it's just amazing that we're able to bring in a product like that, that's a perishable product, and get it fresh to consumers who remember it obviously fresh in their countries. Whether it be Belgium, Germany, France, Australia, wherever.
Yeah,
so.
it is really amazing. The range of flavor and sort of seeing that as a quality of life. It's like you have access to flavors from anywhere in the world.
Absolutely, and the fact that Michigan brewers are making all those beers so true to style, and you can drink them if you want them. You want that style, you can drink it fresh, probably in your neighborhood, because you have somebody that could brew it.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's cool. And we obviously have hung our hat on Michigan beer, and I think today we probably represent 21 Michigan breweries.
Wow.
Could be a few more than that.
Yeah.
It kind of come and go naturally.
Yeah.
And we try to support everybody.
So speaking of that brings me to the next question, which is like, what's important overall about brewery and wholesaler relationships? Like, not just specifically in one house, but what do you think is important to a healthy relationship between the brewers and the wholesalers in general?
Yeah. Well, in my mind, it's and in I guess my philosophy is just I want to do business with people I like, and I have friends in so many places, I think I'm probably one of the most fortunate people for that. I just, you know, you meet so many great people, and it's truly a great industry for that, because you know, when we get together, we truly have fun, and you know, most of the time we're hungover the next day. But you know, to me, it's the relationships. I think,
Yeah.
you know, distributors, suppliers, and retailers. You know, I just have had so many great interactions, and you know, not just in Michigan, but in, you know, California, Ohio, Boston, you know,
Yeah.
Belgium.
Yeah. It's an amazing community.
Really is, and it's always great to get together. And to me, that's the most important thing. I think the, you know, the relationship part of it is really what drives it, and I think it's, you know,
Yeah.
to me, what makes you successful.
Do you have any encouraging words for a brewery that's either just getting started or is looking at distribution for the first time and thinking about, okay, you know, what's next? From your vantage point as a wholesaler, what would be, I don't know, piece of advice or encouraging words for a brewery starting that path?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you got to make good beer. It's, you know, that's where it all starts. And once you make good beer, you gain fans, and you spread out your fan base. And you just have to be true to your passion, and you know, find something you're good at, and you know, that people really like, and you know, hopefully that will drive the train for you, and then you can make anything you want.
Yeah. Do you have, in all your travels in connection with, you know, the people all over the world that you've met, do you have a sense for what you think is Michigan's signature in terms of the beer business, or identity in terms of what stands out that's different about Michigan, and what do people know it for?
Yeah, wow, I never really thought about that. Well, you know, I mean, we are Midwesterners, so, you know, I think that, you know, the thing that stands out mostly, I think, is the fact that we support each other, probably better than any other place that I've ever been.
Yeah.
That's probably it.
Yeah.
You know, Michiganders support Michiganders.
Absolutely.
We're very loyal, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
No doubt.
What about to sort of the consumers, the drinkers out there? What do you, you know, what would you encourage them to do to support our community and keep a healthy beer community here? What's the invitation or call to action for Michigan beer-loving people?
Yeah. Huh. Well, I mean, I think, you know, always try to support, you know, new, small businesses, and, you know, along with, you know, remaining loyal to the ones that you have, but you have to, you know, variety is obviously the spice of life, and I'm amazed at where our industry has come from, you know, when people would drink nothing other than lagers, and now, you know, I have 20-year-old kids who are enjoying sour beers, you know, and barrel-aged beers, and you just think, wow, you know, I mean, when I was in my early 20s, you know, that beer sat in the refrigerator and got, you know, stuff in the bottom of it, and then we'd throw it away, you know. So, I mean, it's kind of funny where it's come to. So,
Yeah, it's a
I
different
think,
world.
you know, obviously, you know, variety, and you know, continue to support Scott King, please.
Where do I want to go? I think I just want to see what else you think. What are you looking forward to? What's next? What do you hope for in the next stretch of time here in this wacky world?
You know, I guess continuing to do the same things, and we're having so much fun. It's I can't see really changing much of anything other than, you know, just continuing to support a great industry that
Yeah.
has supported me, and I guess bringing my family into it, and
Yeah, keep it coming.
yeah,
On to the next.
just supporting the industry all the way around. The beer and wine wholesalers, the association. I hope to remain strong in that, and I hope that our family does. And I think strong wholesalers make strong brewers and winemakers.
Nice.
You know?
Well, thanks for everything you do. It's been a pleasure to know you over the years and work with you, and count you as a dear friend. So thanks for doing what you do for Michigan breweries and really for everybody, for the community.
Well, thank you, Fred.
Yeah.
And thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Cheers.
I think we knew it was big work, but I don't think we had the range of vision to understand what it was going to look like or how much of an impact it was going to have.
I mean, State of Michigan, Travel Michigan, Pure Michigan recognizes craft beer as one of their top 10, maybe less, maybe top 5 reasons people come to Michigan. It's part of our story.
Michigan is an anomaly in the country for how powerful the guild is.
When I first started, there was probably only 8 or 10 other breweries. See, when I went to try to learn anything, there was only one other brewery in the UP, which was Hereford and Hops. And that's the only other brewer I could go talk to at the time. So it was pretty kind of limited. That first Brewfest year changed everything. Craft beer is just totally accepted as the real beer now, and I think that's awesome.
I remember thinking how good I thought this was going to be for our fledgling industry, because people didn't really see us as an industry that had staying power. We're such a mature, established industry that people take so seriously.
We have to make this a qualitative conversation. You should engage with our products because they're an enhanced experience and that there's something to this.
Where I really got excited was, wow, this is the beginning of a whole new industry. Nobody's doing this.
It actually put brewers in each other's faces and to try each other's beers.
Different breweries adding 6 beers, 8 beers, 10 beers. You've seen as many as 20 to 30 different beers.
To have that connection where somebody feels like, I know somebody, we see it as such an opportunity to develop contacts and culture and knowledge.
Hey, look, there goes Joe Short, his name's on this. I get to say hi to him. People love that.
I'll ask questions and he'll tell me anything. Hey, where do you get your supplies? How long does what's the temperature range on this yeast? Anything from A to Z. And they answer all my questions.
I feel like we were a community of people that were really in love with what we were doing. That's what the guild's job was. It's like this is a group of people who got together for one purpose.
For a little engine that could think, we pull off a hell of a party, 4 times a year for a lot of people. I'm very proud of the show that we put on.
It just reaches out, it just spread out, and it touched everybody. And it became a cool thing to do.
Congratulations on 25 wonderful years. We're going to keep growing, and here's to the next 25.